the mighty and resilient Merrimack River, carving through the communities of our great region. My name is Linda Lorden, proud president of Merrimack County Savings Bank, and like the river that serves as our namesake, we're a constant yet ever-changing presence. Because to us, it's bigger than banking. It's about powering communities and putting people first. It's about knowing where you came from and where you're going. That's Merrimack style. Visit us at themerrimack.com.
Hello and welcome back to Chasing Excellence, a show about chasing what truly matters. My name is Patrick Cummings. As always, I'm here with Ben Bergeron. How are you, sir?
Doing good, yeah. Patrick, how are you doing?
Good. I'm great. It's good to see you.
Good.
Thank you, everybody out there, for joining us this time around. We are going to talk about, you sent me an email a little while ago, and you said, let's talk about getting in the best shape of your life. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about getting in the best shape of your life. We're going to get to that in less than a minute, but I just want to let people know, this is probably the last time I'll mention it. You can jump into our latest book club. We are collectively inside of the Chase Club, which is our premium membership. We are reading and discussing The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. We have already started it, but it's not too late. You can jump in and join us as we go through that book. When you're there, you'll also get ad-free episodes plus additional free exclusive content. ChasingExcellence.email is where you can do that. It's also where you can get on our free newsletter list. We send out an email on the weekends with a link to a form as well as some other things. With that form, you can submit questions that you would like us to tackle in future episodes. So again, ChasingExcellence.email. The link is in the show notes. Okay, let's talk about getting ridiculously fit. Let's talk about getting in the best shape of your life. I want to start with, what does it mean? What does it mean to be in incredibly good shape? Like, what does it mean to be incredibly fit? How do we define that so that we can at least say, okay, in this conversation, this is what we're aiming for. This is where we're trying to get folks to.
Yeah, I think it's the right place to start this conversation is to have a shared understanding of when we say get in great shape, what do we mean by get in great shape? And I think if we were to, even as we're saying that, in a conversation, people envision certain things, right?
Yeah.
And it's a six-pack, or it's people that are running marathons. It's people that are on the beach and look strong. But right, what does it mean when we say get into the best shape of your life? What do we actually mean by that? And it's not as simple of a answer as we might think, because you look at like a bodybuilder who's got 3.5% body fat, abs that look like softballs, pasted to their abdomen, and you're like, that guy's in great shape, or you talk to somebody that just ran a marathon and you're like, whoa, wait a minute, you held 6-minute miles for 26 miles, you're in great shape. And so we have to have at least a shared understanding of what we mean by that. And I think that for people in our space, this is going to be a very anticlimactic, approach to it. I'm not going to use like necessarily the CrossFit definition, but if you were to think about, do you have the ability to lift hundreds of pounds? Just that, like, it's simple. Mm-hmm. Do you have the ability to lift hundreds of pounds? Could you go out and run 5 miles comfortably? And could you do a dozen plus pull-ups? And, if you have those things, I don't think we have to worry that much about it, but do you look the part? Like, do you have are you lean? Are muscles showing through? Meaning, do you have a six-pack? Like, I'm not saying the goal is to create, and I'm not saying the six-pack means. What I'm saying is if you have those other things, I'm pretty confident that you are lean, fit, strong, and that you're going to look like you're going to look like you're in great shape. So if you can lift hundreds of pounds, deadlift, and this is kind of a nice way to really simply kind of like layer in your strength. If we're thinking of your deadlift, your bench, and your squat, do you measure that around 100 pounds? Do you measure that around 200 pounds? Do you measure those around 300 pounds? And obviously it's different for males and females, but we'd like for you to be able to do that for hundreds and hundreds of pounds, each of those moves. Mm-hmm. And same thing for miles. Like, could you go out and run a mile comfortably? Could you go out and run 2 miles comfortably? Could you go out and run 4, 5, or 6 miles comfortably? That's where we'd like you to be able to do. If you're in the best shape of your life, you would be able to go out and run a 5K any given day without thinking about it. It wouldn't even be a thing. Like, it's not a challenge. And maybe running 10K might be a challenge, or running a half marathon, but you could comfortably, you have the endurance to go out and do that thing. And similarly, like, when we think about how many pull-ups can you do you measure that in, 1, 2, and 3? Or are you talking like in the high single digits? Or are you in the double digits and knocking on the door of 20? That's an easy way to think about capacity. Mm-hmm. And then similar is like when you think about how excited you are about the way you look. You're like, man, I really wish I could lose 30 pounds. I really wish I could lose 10 pounds. I really wish I could lose those stubborn extra 2 little pounds so I would just be that much more confident on the beach. Or are you like, no, like this is the way I want, this is the way my body should look. This is the way I want my body to look. And I'm very excited to take my shirt off at the beach. Mm-hmm. To me, that's a best shape of your life. And now people go, well, what about the biomarkers? What about triglycerides and HDL and all those things? Yes, those are part of that. But if you took the upper ends of those, if you can back squat hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds, if you can run a 6-minute mile and you can do 20 pull-ups and you're around 12%, 10% body fat, meaning you have abs, I'm not worried about your fasting glucose. Like it's not going to be, you're not going to be pre-diabetic. It's assuming that it's not type 1, like that's something different. So those are more downstream. If you are in great shape, it's the best thing that you can do for biomarkers. So those kind of get just pulled in by default. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of the thing we're saying. Like, what is, if the conversation is going to, what is the best way to get into the best shape of your life? That's what we're steering towards. Is this really well-rounded capacity? It's not just the actual shape. It's not just wide shoulders, narrow waist. It is the actual, it is not that, but it's also involved the true physical capacity. What are you able to do? And to me, it boils down to like your strength, your endurance, and how much relative strength, it's a technical term, but your body weight, stamina.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I want to get into the nitty gritty and the how-tos, but first, perhaps maybe an interesting context question, which is when in this conversation, we're talking about getting in the best shape of your life, getting ridiculously fit. Is this conversation different than if I said, cool, Ben, this time around, we're going to talk about how to become the fittest person on earth?
Yeah, it's different.
Can you maybe parse those things a little bit? So again, so that when folks are listening, they hear the direction we're trying to go and not perhaps the direction we may have gone 7 years ago if we had this conversation.
So I put this conversation in a box where we're assuming people are normal people, meaning that they're going to go to the gym and they're going to spend 45 minutes to an hour and a half in the gym.
Got it.
This is not, I am a professional spending where I go to the gym at 8:30 in the morning and I leave at 6 at night, which is the people I trained. Mm-hmm. It is not that. So that is a very different goal. By the way, there's a lot of third wave adaptations that come with that goal, meaning you're going to compete in these specific tests. You have to get good at these specific tests, which means there's a lot of skills. Mm-hmm. This has nothing to do with skills at all. There's zero skills. This is all transferable capacities. This is not about getting good at the gym. This is about getting good at physical capacities that will then lend themselves to anything you choose to do outside the gym. Most notably, feeling really good about your everyday life.
Mm-hmm. Where to begin? Okay, I think that was actually very, very helpful and a useful distinguishing, again, partly because of your own history of who you've coached in the past, conversation we've had here. I wanted to make sure we laid that down. So where do we begin this conversation about getting, for us normies, for us muggles, getting in the best shape of our lives? Where's the best place to begin?
Okay, so if we were to take those kind of 4 different components, right, which is a certain level of strength, that is to be like in the best shape of your life.
Yep.
That's first off what we're saying is like you need that. So I'm not saying, to be a guy that's 6'1", 145 pounds, be able to run a 2:35 marathon, but the biggest part of your leg is your knee, right? That's not what we're saying. So we're saying is, again, I just need to lay that out. The best shape of your life is you are strong, you can go and do endurance things, and you can move your body, and you look really, really fit. So what we would then do is go, okay, what does this look like on a weekly basis? Let's like time management stuff. So let's break the training into a week to get into the best shape of your life. This is also a prerequisite, a common understanding we have to do is go, hey, I'm willing to do the work. Like that's it. Now we can talk about, I think it's a big part of it, is if the work is 30 minutes a day versus 90 minutes a day. We should have that part of the conversation. But for starters, we just kind of have to do the outline, right? Which is kind of like, okay, this week I need to drive my kids to soccer on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I need to cook meals. I need to do laundry twice a week. And I need to make my bed every day, brush my teeth every day. And I go to work Monday through Friday. And on the weekends, I do this. That's your week. We have to kind of lay out the week. So in terms of what we should be doing to get into the best shape of our lives is we should be doing 3 days a week of strength training. Ideally, those are as spaced out as possible. So something like a Monday, Wednesday, and a Friday is really nice. So on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we should be doing strength training. That strength training should be done with compound free weights, meaning compound, meaning for strength. And this isn't, again, the bodybuilder thing of getting bigger muscles, because that can make you look better, but what we're looking for is not only to look better, but have that functionality, truly strong. Compound means multi-joint, meaning instead of a bicep curl, which is just a elbow flexion, singular joint, we do something like a pull-up, which is not only the elbow flexion, but it's also shoulder flexion. So now we're multiple joint, right? Instead of leg extension, knee extension, we do a squat. Now it's ankle, knee, and hip, 3 joints. And we would choose to do them with free weights, meaning barbells, dumbbells, kettlebells, free weights, not machines. That's the place we would start in terms of laying out what the week would look like. 3 days a week of compound free weights for strength. What's the best way to build strength? Under 10 reps, ideally closer to like the 3 to 5 rep range. That's where we would start to build the system. From there, we would choose the movements that would have the greatest demand and greatest efficacy, the greatest effect on our strength, which would be the power lifts, or also known as the slow lifts, which would be your deadlift, your bench press, and your squat. Now we could choose the alternatives too, which is back squat and front squat, sumo and conventional deadlift, and bench press and strict press. So we want to center the week built around those things. Then what we would want to do is take kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. That's our strength. We want to go so that we can go and do that 5-mile run. We can just go and jump in and go do it. The way we do that is, this is going to sound crazy, but you only need to run long once a week. 1 time a week, you go for a longer, in air quotes, run. So once a week, our training would involve something like go for a 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe upwards to 9 or 10 mile run. And we can talk about the specifics of, do we cycle the strength? What do we think about tempo lifts? Should we do linear progressions? We get into the minutia of it. Same thing we can do with the longer runs. But the gist of it is, do what's comfortable and just add a tiny, tiny little bit. Do that until it's comfortable. Add a little bit. Meaning, if you could run 2 miles right now, go and run 2 miles. And then continue to run 2 miles once a week until that's really not that big of a challenge. And then go and run 3 miles. And do that till it's not that big of a challenge. And then run 4 miles. And so on. you don't need to continually, if you get up towards that 6, 7, 8, 9 miles, you don't need to then continue to go up higher. You've now built up. You're now running for an hour to an hour and a half. You don't need to. You're not going to get any extra benefit out of endurance by going longer than that. In fact, what you could do is go back down to 4 or 5 miles and build back up to allow yourself this kind of waved progression. Your body will respond. You won't overtrain. You won't get the stress fractures that all these endurance athletes get. But that's where you get these two ends of the spectrum now. You have 3 days a week of strength training, really focused on the slow lifts, pull, off the ground, deadlift, squat, and push. Then you have a long run. Now we've got this. Okay, I can lift in the hundreds of pounds, and I can go and run 5 miles. The next one is the body weight thing. In the body weight, we just got to make sure we're doing some body weight work. And the way we're going to do that is incorporate it into the thing I haven't addressed yet, which is actually the number one indicator of the overall. So we have these kind of 3 different things, but they all kind of get over the umbrella of what is your, this is a technical term, but like what's your VO2 max? What's your maximum ability to deliver oxygen to working muscles? And there's a number of different ways to do that. Traditionally, that has been done with cardio work, meaning on bikes, on the track, on rowers. But it is equally, my contention is, more effective to do it with mixed modal cyclical threshold conditioning. Now we can break that down a little bit, but the idea is we're going to do it not just every day on a rower. That you can't do it every day on a rower. It's too hard. You're going to be smashed. You're going to be wrecked. So that's why in these programs, rowers only do VO2 max training once, maybe twice a week. It's so damn effective, but you can't do it over and over again in the same modality. If you change up the modality, you can do it more frequently. And it's the number one thing to do. So you can do it more frequently. And what we mean by that is one day, do it with thrusters and running. And the next day, do it with pull-ups and box jumps. And the next day, do it with kettlebell swings and push-ups. And now all of a sudden, you've got this. So you're using, it's called elegance. Elegance in the mathematical sense of simplicity, but they also work really well. It's pretty. It works really well together. Meaning it's not interfering. There's different movement patterns that are complementing each other from workout to workout. That allows you to have higher levels of intensity without breaking down. And VO2 max is really it's kind of the gold standard. It's the North Star, but it's not by itself. It's mixed modal VO2 max. If you were to take a marathon runner and have them do a VO2 max test on a treadmill, which is a normal way to do it, they're going to score much better than a cyclist would. If you took a world-class cyclist and had them do VO2 max on a treadmill. So we want to get this mixed modal capacity, meaning we can do all these things. That requires certain levels of intentional intensity. We're not just going to go everything we can. In fact, VO2 max training isn't everything we can. VO2 max training is done at essentially like on a rate of perceived exertion. If 1 was essentially where we are right now, recovery, 2 would be those long runs, 2 to 3. You know, it's those long runs. It's aerobic base building. It's also known as zone 2 training. When you bump up past that, you get into lactic threshold training. That's in the 5s and 4, 5, 6s in terms of rate of perceived exertion. VO2 max training is done kind of that 7 or 8s. Then you get into like anaerobic threshold and neuromuscular power and stuff like that. So this is work. You are short of breath. You are working hard. You have to be very intentional. But this is where a lot of people in our space miss it. It's not maximal intensity. Mm-hmm. And this makes a lot of sense when you start to think about the way Greg Glassman laid this out. He said 3 on, 1 off, 5 or 6 days a week, change it up a lot, and it's about mechanics, consistency, and high, underline that, high intensity, not maximal intensity. When people get into this thing that we do, we go, okay, we're going to do Fran. It's about doing it as hard as we possibly can. This is hard. It's hard work, which is why most people don't do it. But it is not everything you have. It is not laid out on the floor, your eyes roll back in your head, you questioning what the hell you just did. If we were to take this another approach, there's practice, training, and competition. You get a lot. We're not talking about the practice. That's skill development. We're talking about training. So what is the best way to train to get into the best shape of your life? It's to train. Now, if you go above that into compete mode, where I will die for points, there's actually not a lot of organic adaptations or neurological adaptations that take place from that. In fact, the recovery cycle is not in your favor.
Yep.
It's going to take more time to recover from that than the benefit you got, meaning you will not receive a super compensation from that endeavor. So we actually don't want to go there as much as we might think. How often do we want to? Once, twice a month? Right? Otherwise, we just want to train. You're going to get the best benefits from training. You make the most gains, not from playing the sport. You make the most gains from practice and scrimmaging, that type of thing, the training thing. So now what we have is we built out, going back to the week, we have 3 days a week of strength training, focus on the power lifts, compound, squat, dead, press. Then we have a long run once a week. Then what we want to do is on those strength days, not on the long run day, but on the strength days, we're also going to complement those with a similar movement pattern in a mixed-modal cyclical threshold conditioning. We're going to double up on those and keep them a little bit shorter. Meaning on those days, we're probably going to do something 8, 10, 12, 15 minutes, right? In terms of the power curve, in terms of the wattage you can produce over time, that's really a sweet spot for the adaptations from training. Even if you're going to try to get better at a super high power, meaning the phosphagen system, that might only last 3, 4, 5, 7, 10 seconds, something like a 100-meter sprint for the pros, they don't go out and do one sprint, right? Their training sessions are longer than that, and they might do sprint and rest, work on some starts, do some build-ups, but they do repeats to where the total amount of work is probably somewhere in that 8, 10, 12 minutes. That's where we want to live most of those times, 3 days a week. Then once a week, we'll do that same type of thing, but a little bit longer. Something in the 20, 25, maybe in 30 minutes. Cyclical, mixed modal, threshold conditioning, but longer. And then that other time a week, we're going to go for a long run. If you do that, now we have the framework. So I'm going to try and lay it out again completely. 3 days a week of strength training. Following those days up with mixed modal threshold conditioning, somewhere in the 8 to 15 minute mark, with similar complementary movement patterns. Meaning if we did our back squat, we might do the condition piece with front squats. If we did bench press, we might do the conditioning piece with push-ups or dumbbell bench press. If we did it with deadlifts, we might do it deadlifts or cleans or something else, kettlebell swings. Another day a week, we're going to do a longer mixed modal cyclical threshold conditioning piece in the 15 to 30 minute range. And then once a week, we're going to go and try to build some endurance with our running. And now we have the framework for your best shape.
All right, we've got more to come. But first, quick word of thanks to a few sponsors before we continue this convo. Gentlemen, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but you can't wear the same pair of shorts you worked out in this morning to date night. I've been told we're just not allowed to anymore. Sorry. Fear not, though, because when you go to shopdoer.com/excellence, you can not only save yourself 20% off some new shorts, but they'll be some of the most comfortable and most versatile shorts you've ever owned. DUER, spelled D-U-E-R, are hands down my favorite pair of shorts, and it's not an exaggeration to say that I reach for them every single morning. DUER makes stretch, performance, denim, and lifestyle apparel that's built for doing. They combine comfort with style and quality for all we do in a day. Plus, they're made with sustainable materials like wood chips, plants, and recycled plastic bottles, and are designed to last. So not only does DUER look and feel great, it's a brand we are and you will be happy to support. Whether you're headed out on a hike or out to brunch with the bros, you'll look good, feel good, and do good. If you happen to live in LA or Denver, you can stop by their flagship stores, or you can head to shopduer.com/excellence to see all their different shorts, jeans, tees, sweatshirts, and more. They've got lots for both men and women. And when you purchase through that link, you'll save yourself 20%. That's shopduer.com/excellence. We are also brought to you by OneSkin. Summer is here, which means you are outside more, you're at the beach, you're at the pool, running more, dragging the barbells out into the parking lot. But are you taking care of your skin while you enjoy all that sunshine? OneSkin is here to make sure you are. Go to oneskin.co and make sure you use the code EXCELLENCE to save yourself 15% off your order of their top-of-the-line, scientifically tested skincare products. Each one of them has been developed by skin longevity scientists and are backed by clinical studies, and they include OneSkin's OS01 peptide that targets zombie cells that cause lines, wrinkles, and sagging skin. It's scientifically proven to reverse skin's biological age at the cellular level. Whether you're out in the sun or just want to keep your skin looking young and healthy, OneSkin has got you covered. Literally. OneSkin is more than skincare. It's about skin longevity, targeting the root cause of aging to help you look and feel your best at every age. Right now, you can get an exclusive 15% off your first OneSkin purchase with the code EXCELLENCE when you head to oneskin.co. Give your skin the protection, hydration, and cellular support it needs this summer with OneSkin. Okay, I've got a couple practical questions. I'm going to hold on them for just a minute because one of the things I keep thinking about as you talk about this, or as I listen, is I think you and I think those of us listening and those of us who've been in, the CrossFit space for a while, we have a good definition of when we hear get in the best shape of your life. We have a good sense of I think we have a good sense of what that means or what that looks like. But I can't help but think a lot of people who aren't in that space or in this space, when they hear like that person's really fit or that person's in great shape, they tend to maybe fall into three buckets. One of those buckets is like he's jacked, right? He's a bodybuilder, for lack of a better way to put it. Spends a lot of time doing backs and buys and calf raises, etc. Mm-hmm. Another version of that is she's really skinny. She's really thin. Mm-hmm. And that's a proxy for she's in really great shape, right? Those things are often synonymous. And then the third one is she runs marathons on the weekends. Yep. She's in really great shape. And so before we get into some of the practical questions I have, I'd love to just get your sense of like, again, our worlds are skewed in the way that they are, but do you have a sense that those are still, when people hear get in the best shape of your life, one of those three pictures is in their head, or is it the guy in the CrossFit gym who goes 4 to 5 to 6 times a week? Like, has that changed at all in your mind, in your experience?
So when I'm saying great shape, if we're talking about in terms of body shapes, mm-hmm. I'm looking for the running back, like the jacked run,
yes, yep, great.
So there's the football player who's the power lifter. There's the wide receiver, and when I say wide receiver, I'm thinking of like the Randy Moss type, the long and skinny, because wide receivers now can be like jacked, right? There's an awesome show on Netflix right now called Receiver, and they show their training, and the guys are just like, so if that's your picture, then it's actually that. But it's honestly, it's like a great shape, or you know what? It's said another way. It's the Navy SEAL, mm-hmm. right? When I say great shape, what I mean by that is if there was a zombie apocalypse, who would live the longest?
Yeah.
Right?
Who are you hanging out with?
It's a guy that can run to the next checkpoint, run away from danger, run 5 miles to get to safety, right? But it's also the guy that can, the rebels, the normal humans are like coming to raid the town and you have to fight them off. You're strong enough to fight them off, and you have that level of intensity to be able to handle high threshold capacity work. That's the shape I'm thinking about. Another one is like a sprinter. Like think of the Olympics are coming up, watch the 100-meter dash. Mm-hmm. That's the body shape. So if we're thinking of body shape, like she's so skinny or he's so jacked, or it's the guy that goes to the CrossFit gym 4 or 5 days a week, it's not any of those. It's not the guy with the biggest muscles. It's not the person with the least amount of body fat. And it's not just the person who goes to the gym. It's the person in terms of body shape. They have muscles. They have little body fat. So they are ripped. But they're not huge and they're not skinny. Mm-hmm. It's an athlete. It's an athletic build. If we were to think about like you look at somebody and you go, wow, they're in great shape. That's what we're looking at. Certainly not the wafy model that most, at least 20 years ago that girls were aspiring to. I think that's shifting a lot. I think CrossFit has a lot to do with that. Thank God. It's also not the bodybuilder for the guys. The guy with the pecs that are so big that they look like a injected chicken, that can't support its own breast and they fall face first on the ground.
Yep. Got it. Okay. Some practical questions. I really like what you did with laying it out over the course of a week, because I think I can wrap my head around that. I can imagine that. I can picture that. I can plan for that. I would love to know, in your estimation, how much time would a person need to set aside, right? Because you had sort of started that with like, you work 9 to 5, you've got to pick up the kids, you've got all these other things that are either literally on your calendar or at least in your mental calendar of like, okay, I know I've got to do those things. And so if you were to say, if somebody's listening to this says, yes, sign me up for getting in the best shape of my life, what is the range of hours that they would need to be able to dedicate to do at least as a pretty darn close approximation to the framework you just laid out? We're talking like 4 hours a week, 7 hours a week, 12 hours a week. What do I need to be able to say I've got that in order to be able to pursue this?
Well, the framework I just laid out was 5 days a week.
Yep. So
the closer you can get to that, the better. And that's what I would start with. The goal is to try to get to that one. So again, 3 days a week of the weightlifting and the 15-minute, sub 15-minute. Then the 1 day a week of longer mixed modal and the 1 day of singular. That's 5 days a week. From a daily requirement, that would require 30 minutes a day. Mm-hmm. Now, not including warm-upping, cool down, and driving to the gym, but 30 minutes of training. So that means that it's hard to prescribe warm-ups because you talk to some people and they spend 2 hours warming up. Yeah. Other people spend 2 minutes.
2 minutes, yep.
Yeah. So from training time, this is 30 minutes of training time, which means that you would spend on the weightlifting days 15 minutes of weightlifting and 15 minutes or less of the high-intensity cardio stuff. Mm-hmm. And then the other one is the longer one is 30 minutes and the run takes 30 minutes. That would be, to get in ridiculous shape, it requires 30 minutes a day, 5 times a week. Mm-hmm. That's like getting in ridiculous shape.
Yeah.
Now, if you have the availability to spend 60 to 90 minutes, I'm not saying every day, but a couple days, be able to spend 60 to 90, then what we do is we take that base framework and you add in a couple other pieces. And most notably, those couple other pieces, the first one I would add in is getting good at carrying things. That's the next thing I would add in, is the ability to, carry / move things. And that means things like you're so much functional, maybe we should define that word, so much functional capacity, so much strength, so much, your body takes an amazing shape. So this is for people like, I don't care if I can, carry 100 pounds, 400 meters without putting it down. That means nothing to me. I don't care about that. The shape your body takes, meaning the way your shoulders develop, the way your midline develops, meaning your abs, the way your legs and your calves, there's so much amazing aesthetics that come from that type of fitness that's the next place I would go to. I would add in 1 or 2 days a week where I would add in a little bit of this grunt work, a little bit of this durability work. Think sets of farmer's carries, sets of sled pushes, sets of carrying things certain distances. Mm-hmm. That also has such amazing carryover to both of the ends of the spectrum we're looking for. That is one of the best training mechanisms to get to improve your strength, because it's kind of what the West Side guys do. Some of the strongest human beings on the planet. They do tons of sled work. They just go and push sleds a lot. But it also helps a ton for the long endurance stuff, because again, it builds up so much durability, so much of this like gait, walking, but it's walking under load or under pressure. And that's basically the most functional thing that a human being can do is get from point A to point B. We're also built to carry things. Like that's one of the very unique things as us as a species is we can carry things. There's very few other animals that actually do that in nature. Like certainly horses do it and camels do it, but there's very few. Yeah, because we make them, right? But there's very few other animals. Dogs, carry avalanche and they put like the whiskey underneath or whatever's the bourbon. And, in Switzerland, they go and rescue people and give them shots. That next thing would be carrying, getting good at moving things. So if we were to stretch out a day beyond a half hour, that's the next place I would go is with that. And if we were to go another place, then I would add in a little bit of lactic threshold work. So we've already done a lot of VO2 max. The next thing I would do is the biggest bang for your buck in terms of the cardio piece, which is lactic threshold. And this is where I think people miss it, is you hear so much conversation about zone 2. And the justification for zone 2 is people go, look what the most cardiovascularly fit athletes in the world do. So they take people like marathon runners and people that compete in the Tour de France. And they go, they spend upwards of 80% of their training week, sometimes 90% of their training volume in zone 2. So then they go and they prescribe that to the normal person. But what they're totally missing is the fact that those athletes are training for 3 to 4 hours a day. If you're training 3 to 4 hours a day, then yes, the majority of your time should be in zone 2. Correct. Mm-hmm. But if you are only training for 30 minutes a day, you will not get the same bang for your buck doing zone 2 for 30 minutes as you will from doing this other triphasic approach, which is this work on your strength, work 1 day a week on your zone 2, and then the majority of your time in this VO2. They should be flipping the question and going, what is the absolute time that those athletes are training in VO2? And what you might find is those endurance athletes, the best in the world, might be spending 20 minutes, 30 minutes a week in their VO2. Cool. Let's mimic that portion of their training because that's going to give the biggest bang for their buck. Now, if you have the availability and your goal is world-class cardiovascular fitness, then yes. What I'm saying is you're not going to win the Tour de France by doing this methodology. But our contention is for us to get into the best shape, which is you have this athletic build that is they're going to live the longest in the zombie apocalypse. I don't want to be able to just bike away from them.
Yep.
I want to be able to do the other things.
Last question, probably. 2.5 hours-ish to get in the best shape of your life. Strikes me as an interesting argument to make because I think a lot of people hear that, get in the best shape of your life, and the thing in their head says, I don't have 15 hours to work out. I don't have 15 hours to go to the gym. I don't have 15 hours to train, however they might define that. And so that's really interesting to me for what you just laid out and say you need to be able to dedicate, let's just round up and say 3 hours of actual training time. Again, to your point, it's not driving to the gym. It's not warming up. But that strikes me as not what most people imagine you would say when they said, Ben, tell me how to get in the best shape of my life. I'm ready to dedicate whatever I need to do. Like I'm ready to be in the gym 20 hours a week if that's what it takes. And then you say, I need you to train for 3 hours a week. That to me is a paradigm shift.
Oh, I think for me, for our community, it is not for the layperson, not for the mass, because the mass hears 3 times a week of 15 minutes of cardio. Yep. That's what they've been told. In order to stay healthy, you need to be active, What is active? It is biking, gardening, walking for 15 to 20 minutes 3 times a week. So I think it depends on where you're coming from.
Totally.
But yes, that is our contention, is that in 2.5 hours, 3 hours a week, you can get into ridiculously good shape. Ridiculously good shape.
Love that. All right, we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you. That was great. That was fun. Thank you everybody out there for listening. Thank you for your ratings and your reviews. One more time, chasingexcellence.email. Make sure you get on the list. Send us your questions for future episodes. We'll get them in as soon as we can. Ben and I will be back soon for a brand new episode of Chasing Excellence.